All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday night book club. We are reading through the Game of Conquering. And this is section 2, chapter 6, or pages 50 something through 82. So, anyways, this book is really challenging me because I'm finding that you want to like put yourself in one of the boxes, right? Like a victim or a survivor or a conqueror. And I'm finding that depending on the situation and depending on who I'm surrounded with in each situation and whatnot, like I'm finding that I kind of bounce around in all these mindsets throughout my day, depending on what the specific situation is, right? So, so to start at the beginning, he talks about the fear of, let's see, yeah. So the fear of failure and how failure is such a crippling thing for some people. No, wait, I'm starting a little bit further in. Yeah, no, he starts with all the different fears. So failure, inadequacy, missing out, the unknown, being judged. And he talks about how like our brains are basically wired to protect us. So they are wired to look for fear. They're wired to see situations, examine what the danger is in that situation, and basically give us thoughts and emotions based on how to protect ourselves from that. And so when we're talking about things like inadequacy, fear, things like that, your autopilot is to go to fear. So what you need to do is basically we're rewiring our brains, we're reteaching our brains how to think past the fear, how to think past. I talked about this at Ruby Retreat, is like basically your brain looks for like, is the effort worth the reward? Is it looking for danger? And you have to basically teach your brain how to look beyond the fear, look toward the reward, look toward like what's the good that outweighs the risk. And so he talks about that a lot in this chapter, is basically like your why is what I don't know if he ever says why, but your why has to be stronger than your fear. So when you're jumping into something like network marketing, which already has, there's already a fear-based, I would say, consensus around it, right? Like everyone's just afraid to jump in. They're afraid to ask questions about it. I feel like it already has that connotation a little bit. So all y'all that are in this book club that are chasing after this, I feel like I'm proud of y'all because you've already taken one step toward overcoming some fear, right? Whether it was a fear of reaching out or a fear of what this might look like for you or a fear of what the time commitment might look like. There's some fear that you had to overcome to get to even this point right here. And so I don't think, from reading this, it sounds like you can be in a victim mindset and get this started, but you're not going to go really anywhere. But you really, even to just get started and do decently well, you're in some sort of a survivor mindset, right? So if you're in that survivor mindset, you're at least willing to overcome fear. You're at least willing to step forward. You're at least willing to put those fears and emotions in a box and not look at them, right? You're at least willing to do that. And we'll face those fears, later on down the road. I will say that survivor mindset will only take you so far. It might take you, you might get some joins, you might even get a couple business builders, but you will hit a point, ask me how I know, in this business where you will have to switch into a conqueror's mindset. This is where, when I do team calls, I don't take notes because my brain's in 10,000 places. So having to follow what I wrote in this book always, like, I have a hard time with it. So I'm just going to go off the things that stuck out to me. But I love where he talks about, I was talking about a conqueror mindset. Where was I going with this? You have to get from that survivor mindset into a conqueror mindset. You have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And he says that you don't want to just survive. You actually want to win. You want to go towards winning. You want to actually do well. You want to thrive. So it's like, you're not just doing the bare minimum. You're willing to take that massive action in order to move forward here. When he's talking about failure, he says, the different ways that people fail. I'm afraid to fail because it'll mean that all the naysayers were right about me and about network marketing. I highlighted that because to me, I think that's probably my biggest fear, is like when you put yourself out there. If I really boiled it down, is like, I don't want people to think they were right. So it kind of drives me. It doesn't actually paralyze me from doing much. I almost kind of like work through that fear because I don't want to prove them right. And I think that's the difference between that survivor mindset and that conqueror mindset is you can actually kind of take that fear and do it anyways and not think about it, or you can work through that fear and let that fear fuel you. So like move into, well, I'm going to show them that they're not going to be right. I'm going to show them that that this was the right move. I'm going to show them that I can do this. There's been a lot of times where, it would have been, it's never crossed my mind to quit, but it would have been much easier to quit. But that thought right there, definitely always keeps me going. It's like, no, I have so many people that have said something and I'm going to let them know that I'm in this for the long haul and I'm not going to let them be right. I don't want those people to be right. The people that were rude and condescending or whatever along the way, like, I don't want them to be right. I want to prove them wrong. And I want to make sure that I blow this thing up and show them that this industry works, this business works. I work with a great company and I'm capable of doing it too. I love that he says failure is the sweat of success. You can't build your success muscles without working hard and sweating. You can't experience success without failure. Thought that was so good. I've never thought of it that way. It's the sweat of success, right? So you're working out. We don't want to sweat. We don't want to be like, that's uncomfortable. It's not fun. It's gross. Everybody can see it. It's public, So we feel like when we fail, it's public. Everybody can see it. It's gross. It's embarrassing, but it's valuable. It's what teaches us what we need to do to move forward. It's what teaches us what works and what doesn't. You cannot have success without failure on some scale of some sort. So going into how each mindset basically allows fear to overtake them. Victims allow fear to stop them from moving forward before they even take the first step. That's why I was saying, I feel like you've got to be beyond a victim mindset to even get into network marketing. I feel like there's got to be some sort of survivor mindset that you're willing to step into because you were willing to take the first step. Everybody on this call has at least had a join, or they've at least done something to work toward getting a join or whatever. Like, y'all have done something to take that first step. So I feel like you're at least out of that victim mindset, but you have to, like I was saying, it depends on the situation. You have to catch your mindset when you are trying to put yourself in that box and knowing where you need to go from here. I don't know about you guys. I'm just being very vulnerable and honest. There's a lot of times reading this where I'm like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. Yeah, that's so-and-so. They do that. And I could think of people, whether it's on my team or friends of mine or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, they fall into that. They fall into that. And then I found like the conqueror stuff. I'd be like, I'm good at that. I can conquer it. And I'm like, well, what am I doing? Like, I'm like putting myself, like, I had to actually go backwards and be like, okay, where can I see myself in the victim mindset or the survivor mindset, and not like intentionally try to put myself there, but where can I see areas or holes where I am slipping into that mindset where I need to do better? Like, where in my business have I made excuses, or where have I, decided to just put that away and do it anyways? Like, I find that there's a survivor mindset in a lot of the things that we do because we tend to like, I'm scared, but I'm just gonna put that away and not worry about it. And then I'm still gonna show up to events. And, he talks about like everybody, the survivors, they show up at events and they are, they're doing the fake work. That kind of hurt, right? They're doing the fake work. They're doing the things and they're on the calls and they're, putting a story up here and there or whatever, but they're not actually digging in and doing the income producing activity. They are doing it in spite of the fear, I guess is what you would try to say, but they're not actually overcoming the fear and taking that massive action and doing the things that they're actually afraid of. He talks about the more you do something, I can't remember if this chapter, last chapter, the more that you do something, the less scary it gets, right? Or the more that you don't do something, the more scary it gets. So he's talking about diving and dancing and all that. It's like the more he didn't do it, the scarier it got. He just basically worked this scenario in his head and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Where had he at the very beginning just like started dancing or started diving or whatever, like he would have worked through that fear and he would have had a whole lifetime of dancing and diving and maybe even being really good at it now. So he has no fear of it, but he let that fear basically paralyze him. And then he just built it up bigger and bigger and bigger. So the second you're feeling fearful about anything, I would recommend just hitting that head on and taking some action and knocking that fear right out. We talked about that a lot, how action is what conquers fear. Action kills fear. So if you're feeling fearful, showing up, I'm not sure how people are going to feel about me. I feel inauthentic today. I'm feeling like, whatever it might be, however you're feeling going into your business, that might be negative. There's probably some sort of fear attached to it. Let's identify that fear and then move forward, put some action to it to move forward. And then he talks about the survivors. I love this where he says, where his director called him or whatever and said, if you want to make this business happen, you need to understand that urgency is synonymous with wealth. I don't want to hear about later. I don't want to hear about tomorrow. And we always say that, right? Fast is easy, slow is hard. And there's urgency that comes with, being, when you're building a business like this, fast is easy. Urgency, put some urgency behind what you're doing, right? So this month, instead of waiting until the end of the month to put that urgency on people, talk to like, hey, what's stopping you from getting started today? Like, let's jump on the phone today. Let's get this done. Like, let's get you, like, I want you already on products by the end of the month, and put some different urgency behind them instead of waiting until the end of this month to start really, pushing to get people started. Urgency is so important when it comes down to team building. Survivors do not allow themselves to be defined by their past. They're willing to try, but they lack belief in themselves and they question the steps that they're taking. I think a lot of that does, if you're a perfectionist, you're probably sitting in a survivor mentality or survivor mindset. So if you're constantly like, okay, I'm gonna say I'm going to post today and I'm overthinking my post and I put my post up and I don't know if people hate it. I don't know. Like you're in this, like you're doing it anyways, but you're not actually being strategic about how you're doing it. And you're worried more about what it's not doing more than what it is doing. Like you're more worried about what it, the fear that's behind it more than the people that it could be helping. Like start putting that positive spin on it. He talks about that in the end where, I'm going to find a positive spin on my negative report or on my negative attitude or whatever. He goes into talking about overcoming fear is basically finding the positivity in what you're doing. Find the positivity in your situation. He talks about being an introvert. If you're an introvert, great. I'm a really good listener and I'm really, really, really good at building relationships. Being an extrovert, like I'm very good at being able to talk to anybody and lead teams. Like you can use any weakness, quote unquote, that you have, find the positive spin on it and actually go look. Like he said, he looked online and there's a ton of CEOs who failed high school like he did, or didn't get good grades or whatever. And they still are CEOs of these huge companies because he went to go find it. He went to seek out the positivity, not that people failing school is positive, but you know what I mean? Like to seek out that positivity, like there's people that have been in my situation and they were still successful. They still had long-term success. They're still wealthy. They're still, building great families, whatever. He went and saw out those things. So if you train your brain to start looking for those positive things, then your brain will automatically start to look for those things. And then that's when you start to attract those experiences, attract those other leaders, attract those types of scenarios to you, is when you're actually out there looking for them. So I've been talking a lot the last couple months about retraining your brain. So I just thought this was such a fitting chapter for right now, because it's so important for you to take your thoughts captive, understand what you're thinking, understand what feelings are connected to those thoughts and what actions you're not taking based on the thoughts that you're thinking. I know that was a lot, but you have to take control of your thoughts. You have to think thoughts on purpose, like he says. Conquerors think thoughts on purpose. We choose the thoughts. We are intentionally thinking thoughts, taking those things and if you have a negative thought, switching that in your brain, turning it into something positive, or speaking out an affirmation to cancel out that negative thought until you start to believe that about yourself. It's all about retraining your brain. So important. Okay, I am going to open. I feel like I've got a few more, but I could talk forever. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and y'all share what stuck out to you.
So in I'll share one thing from the book in a second, but I just want a quick mention in it was in Eva's, she's a diamond, in her stories today. She shared a quote and it just made me think of this while you were talking, Natalie. But it was a quote from this guy, and it says, "There's absolutely zero chance that you'll succeed at anything if you aren't willing to pay the price or the entry price. And the entry price is embarrassment. So climb the cringe mountain." So I feel like you could say that that's, the fear. That's, yeah, the embarrassment, because fear, ultimately, you're afraid of being embarrassed. You're afraid of, whatever comes from any kind of fear is probably likely connected to some form of embarrassment. And that is simply the entry price to success. So I thought that was quite fitting for this chapter and what we were talking about. And the fact that he's saying, like, normalize, essentially normalize and change the narrative for what failure is, for what it means to learn and grow through that in order to be successful. But another thing that came up, actually right before this, we had Jewel group coaching, and I mentioned this part of the book. In that, we were talking about different things, and I feel like you could apply it to so many things in our business when it comes to, we were specifically talking about leadership and how to best lead different even enneagrams or personalities, and really not cap our own leadership so that we can best help other people, right? So how can we know that we're doing enough, or maybe there's insecurities that come with that and whatever as a leader. And one thing that I mentioned was when he talked on page 80, and he says, we really get to create our own story, and it's not so much what happens to us or even who we are. It's the story that we're telling ourselves. So if we are telling ourselves a different story than truly who we even are, that's what's actually going to matter, what we're telling ourselves, because that's going to impact how we act and how we work with other people, and how we can add value or not add value based on the story that we're telling ourselves, even if you are capable of so much more, but we're telling ourselves other things. We're telling ourselves we're insecure, or other people could do something better, or whatever, or there's a fear, or whatever that is. So he tells us we get to decide, though, and we get to rewrite our story. We get to specifically choose what we're going to tell ourselves, and we can change the world with our story, but it begins with what we're telling ourselves. And what story do you tell yourself when you fail? So very impactful that at the end of the day, it's not even what is happening around us, what happens to us, or even who we are. It's what we tell ourselves. So we get to change that. We get to stop telling ourselves the things that we're afraid of, stop telling ourselves our insecurities or whatever it is. And we get to tell ourselves what we want to do to move forward, to add value, to succeed, and all the things.
So good. I love that. Says you get to decide what part, like how people hear your story. You get to decide that. I love what you read before about climbing cringe mountain. It feels that way sometimes. Anyone else have anything they want to share?
So just to warn you, I have a fussy baby. So if he starts again, I might just mute. But I really liked both the reflection on, like, the longer that we put off those things we're afraid of, the harder, they are to do. And I actually, like, can specifically remember things, like, as a kid that I was too afraid to do or try or whatever, that now as an adult, I'm like, man, I really should have, tried to do that thing when I was younger. Like, my daughters now, like, they're obsessed with, like, cartwheels and back bends and all the things. And I was like, I never learned to do a cartwheel. So that was really, really big for me. And it made me realize that we still have that opportunity to become someone who's willing to try anything, even as an adult. And then the second thing that I really, really liked was, and my brain died. What was it? I'll come back if I remember it, because I just lost it. But yeah.
Happens to all of us, girl. It happened to me just a minute ago. Where was I going with this? I love what you're saying about, not doing things as a kid. And then now you're older and you're like, man, I wish I had learned that. I'd have been doing that my whole life. I've got a few things like that.
So for me, is this on? Okay. So I was, like I said in the chat, when I was reading through the last couple of chapters, I was really starting to see this pattern in my life, starting in my teen years of being a survivor, because I did survive a lot of childhood abuse. And, but then he said something in there about like, if you just stay in survivor mode and you don't become a conqueror, you stay in survivor too long, that mindset, you could like get into like you can't just stay there forever, you'll fall backwards, like back into the victim mindset. And so he was talking about how like the survivor part is an important step, but staying there is the problem. And that's something that I suddenly, like as I was reading through that, I was able to see this cycle repeating my whole life of like getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let the abuse that happened destroy me. And then I would kind of move into survivor and I would start to do some things and get better in ways, but I was stuck there. Like I didn't even know there was like something past that to move to. And so I would stay there so long and I would be like, he's like you were guys were talking about like doing all the work, but the useless work, like even with like recovery for me when I was recovering from drug addiction and stuff, like I did the work. Like I was always working on my recovery, but I was at the same time avoiding the really hard parts that turned out to be the most important parts. And so like I just started to all of a sudden see like my whole life kind of going before me in this cycle of okay, launching out of victim mindset into survivor, but then being stuck there and then eventually just falling back into victim mindset. Even since, and Cassandra and Justina can attest to this, since I started with Plexus, they I know have seen me and they've tried everything to push me past to the next thing, but I just, and they're so patient and loving because like uh, I probably would have just kicked me out by now because you got to get tired of just watching this person go back to the things that you just helped them leave, you know. But I it's just I hope that this is the last time, and now that I'm learning like, oh, okay, there's this something else to turn into next after survivor, and now I know at least I have a goal of somewhere else to go, because thinking that living in survivor mode forever is the goal, that was just not working. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, Bonnie, I love that. And I'm like, congratulations on such like huge moves, like strides forward in your journey. And I'm just like, I don't know, I want to hear more of your story sometime. Like, I think that sounds like you've got such a story behind all of that. But yeah, you can't stay in survivor mode. If you stay in survivor mode, like you said, you go back into that victim mentality. And, where you talk about it's the hard work and facing the hard work that actually matters. That's scary. That's so scary. And I think anytime you're in some type of like, trauma or addiction or something and trying to overcome it, there's a huge fear wall standing in your way that, you could just stand behind it and be totally fine with where you're at, or you could do the hard work of breaking that wall down and getting through to the other side. So I think it was so good. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else?
I really liked where it talked about through the conqueror mindset, you have to see your so-called failures from a different perspective, and you have to study them, and then you have to turn them into your strengths. So they even say in the book that is where growth happens. And I'm a very tangible person. Like, you tell me to go for a run, like, I want to know where, I want to know how hot it's going to be. I want to know like all the things. Like, I want to know like what to do exactly. I don't want somebody just to tell me to grow. Like, I need something much more tangible than that. And I thought that was really nice that they pointed that out. Like, study your weaknesses, turn them into your strengths. And that is where you will find success. And so we talk about personal growth all the time and how it's so good for you. And this is like the nitty gritty of doing your personal growth and reading the books and all the things, is nailing down your weaknesses or your failures, or what you're carrying that you shouldn't be, and then turning them into strengths. And then I love the steps that follow. Set attainable goals, change your story, study your weaknesses, study, what did it say? See the good, and then step away from the need for perfection. And I just thought that was something very tangible that we can all just, like, okay, that's what I'm going to decide to do then, because it's there and I can see it and I know what I'm doing. Right?
Mhm. Yeah, it's so important. I'm like you though. I'm like, where are we running? Is it going to be hot? What do I wear? Why are we running? We could just walk. We could take a car.
I think on page 72 about the fake work, like, we joke about it and kind of laugh, but it's a real thing. Especially given the nature of us like working on phones all the time and how easily it is to be distracted or feel like we're working, but it's not actually. Like, oh, an hour just went by and what did I actually do? So I don't know. I mean, we laugh, but it really is like, no, that's reality. Like, a lot of times it's fake work, and it's just like this vicious, crazy cycle of time wasting. And it could be so much further if that wasn't the case. So yeah, deep down, they know they're just doing busy work, fake work. And trying to like get to a mindset shift around that, and just really going in with a plan, and could make a big difference. When I go in with a plan and a mindset to not fake work, it goes a whole lot better. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like that.
Hardest-
But
It's hardest to lead yourself, right?
totally.
I think that this is sometimes one of the saddest and most frustrating and hardest things about what we do is seeing massive conqueror potential in somebody and seeing what they could be, or seeing what they could overcome and what they could do if they were willing to put the work in, and they just can't get over the victim mindset. It's so hard and so frustrating. Not frustrating for me, I'm like frustrated for them, because I'm like, you have so much in you. Like, I wish you could see it, but you are refusing to get out of your victim mindset. And unfortunately, on social media, there's a lot of like permission to be a victim, in reels and stuff like that. It's a lot of permissive victim mentality. So we feel like we have permission, so we just stay there. But just because that's where a lot of other people want to be doesn't mean that that's where we're trying to be. I'm this victim.
The very last page, the section about stepping away from the need of perfection really spoke to me. And I'm maybe because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, but, and I think all of us have a little bit of that in us, right? That need or want to be perfect. Or, I mean, how many times do we re-record a video because we made a little boo-boo or a mistake, and because we want it to be perfect? Or how many times do we go back and do something else or whatever? And I just appreciated reading that because it's like job. It's not required to do what we do here, as long, and then I read, do your very best and forget the rest. And this is the quote my grandma Evils said to me my whole life. And it just got a little teary-eyed because I was like, oh my word, how fitting is that? And so I think we just put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be perfect and to try to be perfect. And it's just not necessary because we're never going to be perfect, right? We know we live in a broken world. And I think just claiming that and being okay with not being perfect, I think there's just freedom in that. And so I don't know, just some thoughts on that little section there that struck me.
Love that, Sue. I was reading I was in my memories and I was reading a post that I wrote a couple years ago, a Plexus post. And I remember specifically having a perfectionist mindset over it. And like, just, it took me hours to write it, and reading it now, I was like, oh, that is so cringy. Like, I can't believe I thought that was like, I spent that long on it and I landed on that to put out there. So it's like our perfectionist mindset is like really just situational too. It's all perspective on what perfection really is. Sorry, I had to move my computer. It was getting ready to die and I couldn't find my extension cord, so I had to sit on my floor up in my office. So I apologize. Anybody else have anything they want to share? I think we're about there. So if anyone else has anything, speak now. Okay. Two imperfections. What you do with that? Yes, I love that, Amanda. She said it's your imperfections and what you do with them that inspire more than anything else, I think. So you're right. People can relate to your imperfections, right? They can actually, if you're perfect and you're outside of what normal people can accomplish anyways, then you're not relatable, and then people are going to think they can't do this with you. So, and it just even goes outside of Plexus. That's just in life in general. So good. All right. Well, I will, I always love Thursday nights. I love hanging out with you guys and talking through growth and leadership stuff. So, we'll call it a night for tonight, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a good night, y'all.